order and invite Maggie Allen to come on down and center us with an opening prayer.
Dear God, we thank you for our opportunity to serve our ladies and trusted community. May we, members of the Student Senate, be servants of hope and instruments of great change. May we listen and lead with humanity, kindness, courage, and love. May we develop a community that inspires all to engage in our daily vocation to be the truest brothers and sisters we can be. For our dedication, may we call this community our family and this university our home. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maggie. And we can move it over to roll call.
Dan Bowden-Diestel. Isabella Garcia's proxy. Daniel Schermerhorn. Sarah Kirsch. John Mansfield. Christina Escadillo. Dan Law. Anoop Sunkara. Michael Murakami. Jordan Leiden. Niels Casperson. Maggie Allen. Albertina Estrada Martinez.
Here.
Madison Nemeth. Henry Jackson. Benjamin Earhart. Jason Thomas. Natalie Ortega. Molly Schrock. Elaine Teeters. Ahmed Al-Hozani. Alec Brayler. Bianca Burnett. Carson Thompson.
Here.
Libby Messman. Anisha Japira. Michael Lynch. Miles Kelly. Alex Kobolowski. Patrick Lee. Grace Franco. Or Grace Franco's proxy. Teresa Salazar. Henry Bates. Blake Johnson. Johnny O'Meara. Renee Pearson. Jordan Thuralt. Sam Canova.
Here on the Zoom.
Ricardo Poses Garza. Connor Delaney. Rachel Engel. Thomas Davis. Aaron Benavides.
Here.
Grace Stevenson.
Here.
Mairead Pfaff. Kurt Golden. Matthew Bisner, his proxy. Estefan Linares.
Here.
Perfect. And Karen Kennedy.
All right. Catherine, can you keep us going by giving us a brief recap of last week's meeting? Be lovely.
Sure. So last week we just had executive updates, which included an overview of the Race Relations Week events, an update on the Title IX committee, which is supposed to have the final guidelines formulated by November 20th. We're updated on the discussion with Father Jenkins and the provost and the student advisory group for campus reopening, with topics including Father Jenkins addressing the student body on his actions, as well as the need for some sort of break during the semester. And the Campus Life Council met for the first time with discussions mainly about mental health and the need for a break.
Wonderful. Any questions, comments, concerns on the minutes from last week? All right, seeing none, minutes are approved and we can move on to executive announcements. I believe both of these are mine today. The first one is an update on Title IX procedures and policies. Really exciting news on that front. On Wednesday, we met as a committee and we approved the October 2020 draft for procedures for resolving concerns of discriminatory harassment, sexual harassment, and other sex-based misconduct. And throughout the next week, we'll be presenting that to a number of different university bodies. So on Monday, there will be a presentation to the University Committee on Women, Faculty, and Students. I believe on Wednesday, there'll be a presentation for the Subcommittee on Academic Council. And now that our working group has formed this draft, we really want to just get as much input as possible to put the finishing touches on it. And so I feel like we're in a really great place. Again, big shout out to Abby Wolf, our Director of University Policy, for her work on that as well. But as always, if you guys have any questions that you'd like me to bring forward to that committee, I'd be more than happy to do so as we, again, put the finishing touches on that document. And then our second executive announcement, Senate apparel update. So I see that some of you guys, 6 of you guys, are superstars and have already filled out the form I just dropped. Just put your size sweatshirt in, that would be phenomenal. These are unisex sweatshirts, if that helps for your reference. And once I have your sizes, I can get the official quote from Mike from API so I can show you guys all the beautiful design. Also, do not worry about the price of the sweatshirt because they will be free for you all. This was included in the Senate budget that got approved earlier this year. So all of you will be getting a sweatshirt for free. So don't let that be a factor. Okay, wonderful. And so without further ado, would love to bring forward Chris Abayasinga, Senior Director of Campus Dining and Auxiliary Programs, Cheryl Bauer, Director of Sourcing and Sustainability, and Luis Alberganti, Director of Residential Dining, to give us a presentation today. So come on down, guys.
Good evening. It's great to be here with you all again. Thank you for having myself and members of my team here to share with you kind of what our dining journey has been since our last visit with you, and also to share kind of some updates, and I would say also some very future-looking things as well. When we were here last time, we had come forward to kind of share with you our steps towards obviously reducing the amount of single-use disposables on campus, and specifically also to share with you our focus on improving both the dining experience as well as the food items and our process of service, et cetera, et cetera. So since then, you might have noticed in the dining halls, we have had a significant focus on individually serving each of your meals versus having them prepackaged, which was again a desire. For all of you who wrote to me about making sure that the voodoo chicken was spicy, please know we have added an extra dose of spice in there as well. I know that can be a highlight for a lot of folks. And also from a dessert related perspective, we have really focused on just really improving the dessert experience. But I think additionally to that, and I'm going to let my colleagues here kind of really touch on it because it's really been their hard work that has gotten us there, to speak about the continuing focus on plant-forward food. So I'll ask them to talk about that. And then we'll also talk about a series of special events, give you our run-up on how Harvest Fest went. And then also looking forward to an event that we're looking to host with our partners called the Halloween Spooktacular. So with that, I'll just turn this over to Cheryl to discuss kind of everything sourcing and sustainability wise.
So since the last time we met, we've rolled out the reusable cutlery kits through the dining halls. And I guess I would love to get some feedback, if not right now, in the future. You can email me, call me. But the distribution, we tried to roll it out through the resident halls because we thought that was the best way to hit every student. I thought it went well that way, except for off campus, that we had to slightly change how we looked at things for those students and then the faculty and staff on campus. But if there's a better way that you feel going forward, that if we were to roll out more initiatives, that we could hit the student body easier for you, more fluently, please let me know. We are still looking at various different methods that we can tweak what we're doing to make it more sustainable, whether it's through some of the vegan offerings that we're talking about. And I'm sure most of you have seen the vegan lines that are available in the dining halls and how each day that they have some really good rotating products. I'm not vegan, but they're really tasty. And I know that the two don't always go hand in hand when people are thinking about, it's like, oh, vegan food, not so good. You should try it if you haven't so far. But we're looking at more things to bring in and opportunities for you to experiment with. Next month is Vegan Month in the US, so we might be having something there that could surprise you. Along with that, we are looking at possibilities of a little bit more options, opportunities on the self-service almost line coming forward in the next semester with possibly cereals and taking small steps to be able to bring those back to something that's a little bit more on the normal scale for you. With that, I would like to turn it over to Luigi to talk about the Harvest Fest.
All right. Thank you for having us, guys. What a semester, huh? So far, it's awesome. Well, Cheryl told you on a couple of initiatives that we're taking. If you remember last time we spoke, we're still in the planning phases of a couple of very interesting activities. We thought about how blessed we've been with the weather for this year. So we started thinking, why don't we bring some activations outside? And then a lot of brainstorming took place in collaboration with Karen Kennedy's team. I thought we did very good. Do you guys receive any feedback about the Harvest Fest that we did? Or if you want to share anything? Shall we try something like that again? Maybe? Okay. I think we have something coming. As a matter of fact, next weekend for Halloween, we're going to have this spectacular event. There is a lot of planning in there. We have a very fun menu that you'll hear soon. But I'd like to start with that. We did a culinary competition with chili because we wanted to bring the best chili possible for that night. And we also want to make sure that you were the first ones to taste it. So we brought a sample that is out there. We're going to have, we have cups in there. We didn't have the time to work on a vegan version at this point, but the chefs are working on that. So we will have it for that day, another vegan chili addition. But this chili is phenomenal. It's very chunky. It's made with brisket. Please enjoy it. It has some red wine in there that alcohol has been cooked off anyways, so don't get too excited. And it's nice and spicy, so I really hope that you enjoy it. Let me ask you one thing. We're trying to get creative here. On the last night game that we had, we offered a late night breakfast. Can you raise hands who went there? Thank you. Was it a good idea, or shall we try something else? All right, good. So maybe that's another opportunity that we have on the next late game that we have. We thought that was super cool. I saw a lot of positive feedback in there, so I really would like to think that it was well appreciated, at least for the amount of bacon that we sold that night. That was good. And then we will continue working on the service style. If you notice, we've been increasingly offering service style from giving you the choice of what you want. We're really limiting the pre-box meals right now. I think we're getting to the point of that we can actually execute this without additional stress for the staff. We brought a couple of help from other units as well. So I really hope that you see the difference in there. We will continue working on these efficiencies. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Can wait for the next week, and then we have another event after that to see what we can come up with. But in the meantime, feel free, you know, the communication line is always open. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and we'll be more than happy to discuss about that. With that being said, I'll get it back to Chris.
Yeah, just feel free to shout out any questions you guys may have.
Yeah, thank you. It would be great for us to also hear kind of what's on your minds when it comes to your dining experience. That would be super helpful. If you want us to provide additional details on what to look forward to for the Halloween Spectacular, I can also tap my colleague Karen to speak about what sort of activations we're planning on that evening, but would like to kind of open the floor to hear from folks on what they'd like to know about.
Niels, go for it.
So last time you guys were here, you discussed
Thank you for that reminder. I was supposed to mention that earlier. We're actually about a week and a half out on that. We had to wait for our partner to be able to bring it in. We're going to be changing over to that. We're anticipating around the 2nd. So watch for it to be coming in soon.
Awesome. Michael?
How have the Indiana regulations changed for things like seltzers? Like, how is that going to influence things like the cereal or other foods for
So the Indiana regulations have let up a little bit, and you've noticed that when you go out into the community. What we're still taking a more restrictive approach here on campus just to try and keep things as safe as possible. But I think that I've located some dispensers that are no-touch dispensers that will allow us to do that. So keep your fingers crossed that that goes well next week.
Another one from Niels. Oh, I see Ricardo. Yes, go for it, Ricardo. You were blocked, but go for it.
Thanks so much. First of all, thank you again for being here, yet again, and keeping us apprised of these new developments. I actually don't necessarily have a question, but I do have feedback for Luigi. I do believe you mentioned Harvest Fest a couple of moments ago. For me, at least, and for my social circle and group of friends, we thought it was a very positive experience overall. It was very nice to see something going on outside. It was very nice to go outside and throw some footballs and enjoy a good time. So it was not necessarily just the food itself that was conducive to a pleasant atmosphere or event, so to speak. But the perspective of having like something fresh and new coming in to kind of break the monotony of the day in and day out process of this semester was incredible. And if you guys have similar initiatives down the pipeline, I hear Food Fest might be coming. Those, at least for myself and for the people I know, would be greatly appreciated and awesome. So thank you so much for your work.
Awesome.
I think
Thanks,
it's called the
Ricardo.
Spooktacular. Spooktacular.
Catherine, did you have a question?
Yes. Do you want to just sort of, I have a question. I have two things. So on the, oh, thank you. On the menu. Yeah, that might help. On the menus, I saw that there's like different options of like Siegfried dining and like, and then the other day there was chili in the dining hall that was like under Siegfried dining, and I just didn't know what those menus were related to. Sorry, on the campus dining website.
On the website, some Siegfried
Yeah.
menus, okay. That's probably to let, now we have a tri-campus experience. So, so the idea is students from all three campuses can share the same experience or a similar experience as well. So we'd like to put it in there. Do you notice that it was, I mean, we have the menu for North, the menu for South, and then Siegfried. And that's the intention of it, just to put it in under one umbrella.
And we also have the menu for Noble family dining as well at St. Mary's on that same.
That's correct, yes. Any other questions? I forgot to mention, if anybody has any feedback about the hot chocolate Fridays activations that we're doing at South, that's another opportunity that you guys have to get out of your dorm, go and have some hot cocoa, maybe toss some balls if the opportunity is there. But that's another more like repeating activation that we have. I think somebody else, do you have another question? Yes.
Yeah, I had two food-related questions. And I don't know if you guys are even privy to this information, but I was wondering what's preventing the return of wing nights. Because a lot of my constituents are emotionally invested in that.
Okay.
Shall I take that one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So one very, very interesting and I would say very real phenomena in the chicken market, if you will. So there's specifically a series of commodity markets because we buy from commodities versus like just going to like the grocery store, for example. And the wing market has been extremely unstable at best when it comes to pricing. And if you can imagine, when we go to market to buy these wings, we will literally buy the trailer out, right? So from that perspective, we haven't really got to a spot where we would feel from a stewardship perspective, it made sense for us to buy that. Now, that doesn't mean we can't have a wing night. We just got to work through a series of events, and it's also based on fryer capacity for us as well to be able to get up to that. But thank you for sharing that with me. we should probably give it some thought.
Yeah, that's a good mental note to have, and we'll watch the market, how it goes, and then when the product is available for the quantity that we request, probably we're gonna activate into that. Yes, go ahead.
So I guess another food request. A lot of people have been clamoring for the cilantro lime, Chipotle ranch or Southwest salad. Any chance that gets brought back?
Yes, let me talk to the chef after this, but we'll make sure that we have specifically for north or south.
South where we eat.
South, is that what it is? Okay. And north too. I knew that. Yes, we'll work on the condiments for the Southwest. Go ahead.
Sorry, this is my last one. But last year it was called creamy tomato soup, and this year it's called creamy tomato, or it's just tomato bisque. And I don't know if there's a difference in the recipe, but I thought the soup was better.
You would be surprised as to how much soup we taste. What I will tell you is there is a recipe difference between the two.
The market piece that goes with it as well.
So the reason we're both looking at Cheryl is she actually, from a sourcing perspective, overlooks a team that actually helps create all the recipes. So she's actually the brains behind the outfit, to be honest with you. Luigi and I just come along for the ride, so.
We just tasted.
Yeah. But yes, the bisque is more delicious for sure.
That's still a market issue.
So we've changed our process actually, where we've teamed up with a vendor that's helping us with the soups for various different reasons. But then that vendor that we teamed up with, because of COVID and market issues, they weren't able to produce everything that we wanted at the time. So we had to then switch to something else to be able to bring it in. And so we're doing a dance with all of our market items currently. It's starting to get a little bit more stable, but it still is, we need to buy what's available, unfortunately.
Yeah, something I've been hearing from my constituents is that they're frustrated that the same thing is offered every week. And I've had talks to them about it, and I think it's less so that the same thing's offered every week as the same thing's offered every day of every week. So like some people only go to, they like can't go to dining hall for lunch because the class is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's when like the quesadillas are offered, that's when the salads are offered. So I think it would be nice from a menu standpoint if maybe every single week it wasn't the same food on the same day, but switch the days around so people can have the variety of the different foods when they can go to dining hall on different days.
So let me take that one. We're actually beginning the process of forming the spring menus. So they're actually due to my desk November 2nd, I believe. And part of what we're looking for now is to actually deliver that sort of rotation you're speaking about. Because I think we're collectively at the point with our staff where we have the ability to do that. We just need to plan it from that perspective.
And that's mostly for lunch, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah, it falls during lunch for sure. Hi.
Thank you. Yes. I was really happy that like the desserts were brought back. But could you increase the allergen listings on this? Because like I'm allergic to nuts, and I only eat like 2 of them because a bunch of them look like they have nuts in it, and like obviously like the stickers one has nuts in it, but there's a bunch of them that just look like they have random stuff in it that I can't like risk eating. So would it be possible to better label a lot of the different foods that are packaged like that?
How sensitive to nuts are you?
I'm not that much.
Okay.
Not good.
Because the facility, the bake shop that we do utilize here on campus does have nuts, right? I mean, it's airborne from that perspective, so it's not a hermetically sealed environment for that. But we can definitely work on the labeling for this, so that way we can put it right on the container itself, yeah.
Ingredients.
Have you ever tried Net Nutrition?
Yeah, I'm not that allergic.
We have a site on the campus dining website that you can go, and it will tell you all of those things. And right now, I think we're rotating four or 5 desserts, and you can go in and you can see all that. You'll see every single ingredient that's in every item that we produce, and sub-ingredients as well.
Oh, Marie.
I think one of you mentioned before the hot chocolate on Friday, and I got the hot chocolate and had a very positive experience. That people were like very efficient, the line moved quickly, it was hot, it was great, and it was like a big cup of hot chocolate, which I loved. So I really liked it.
I don't know if you guys are in charge of this, but a lot of the guys are upset that food sales are still shut down, and I was wondering if there's any update on the ability of like opening back up the food sales within the residence halls.
So in campus dining, we don't oversee the sales of food in res halls. I don't have enough definition to be able to speak to that. I would definitely recommend maybe a conversation with your rector to begin with and go from there, yeah. Okay.
I thought that the midnight breakfast, oh, thank you. I thought that the midnight breakfast after the football game was awesome. Like me and all my friends loved it. And the line also moved pretty fast for that, given that it was a football game. So that would be highly appreciated for the Clemson game. Mhm.
It would be a wonderful way for us to celebrate a good win as well by having midnight at breakfast. Okay. Okay.
All right, guys, we maybe have 5 more minutes for questions, comments, concerns before the chili gets distributed, which I'm very excited about.
And one thing, before you go to the football games, note that we have a team dedicated to give you something to eat before you go to the stadium. So we have available hot dogs by the entrances and in strategic places. So and that's, of course, is free. So nothing better than a free hot dog before a game. Just keep an eye for that.
Okay. Karen, any thoughts?
Campus dining is an amazing partner for us in student activities. And so for those of you who have been on the lawns late night, you've seen the hot chocolate on South Lawn on Saturday night, and then on Friday night, and then on Saturday night, they actually provide us with all the s'mores packages as well for those who go to Library Lawn and enjoy the s'mores on Saturday night. So super helpful about that. We have partnered, as you know, on the Harvest Fest, and we are excited that we have this Halloween Spooktacular coming up on Halloween. So they'll be doing a really fun dinner, different dinner, but in a similar style to what they did last time. And then we are working to plan all kinds of outside events very similarly, and actually have some great partners in our Hall President's Council friends. So a big thanks to Kurt. I don't know if you want to say anything about those plans yet, or are we not unveiling those? Keeping those a secret, but it's very exciting. So just get ready for Halloween. We also will have some movies we're showing, some crafts, lots of outside opportunities for you guys to get out and do things that night. So to Ricardo's comment, yes, we will keep doing that.
Thomas has a question.
Thank you for being here. Beginning of the semester, we received 200 extra flex points. Will that be extended into next semester if you have any plans for that, or should we ration those?
I figured I wouldn't leave without a flex points question. Okay, so following up from student feedback from years past when we redesigned the meal plans, this time around with the block meals, if you have a balance of flex points left over at the end of the semester, it will roll forward into next semester. So you will not lose those based on that, based on the additional $200 flex points you got. We issued the $200 in the fall semester, anticipating it for the fall semester. So I can neither confirm nor deny that at this point. He is good. I knew he was going to hit me up with a flex.
Before we distribute the chili, can you guys reveal by how large of a margin the red wine chili won? Because I did vote for that one, so I'm just curious.
Well, I do. You do too?
60%. Oh my goodness. Red wine. Incredible.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting here, though, because I do want to give a shout out on the other side of this as well. So while 60% of the student body overwhelmingly voted for the chili that you're about to sample, know that the other 40% voted for a vegan-based chili. right? The second most popular was the one made by our chef at South Dining Hall, which was called Juan's Impossible Chili. We put the Impossible in there as well, and that was really well rated. So know that we're working on a vegan chili as well that will definitely bring the heat like this one will. So, okay, thank you, incredible.
Thank you all three. We really, really appreciate it. All right, thank you guys all so much for your great engagement. Those questions and comments, we're always really grateful to the campus dining staff to be with us, share their wisdom, and hear about plans moving forward. So we're just riding a presentation high this evening, and I will now invite Ricardo, the Club Coordination Council President, to deliver his presidential presentation for the fall semester.
Let's see if we can move this podium.
It's broken.
Oh, that's a shame.
We found that out.
Will it support the computer?
It should.
Okay, hopefully it doesn't break the computer. That'd be a big shame. We can just have like a clicker.
Yeah. Let's see if it works. I don't think it works. Oh, there you go.
Oh, it works. Hey everyone. Oh. Hey everyone. Seems a little better. After that exciting and more importantly delicious presentation, I'm happy to have to bore you with a long presentation on very, very esoteric matters. So hopefully you guys can stick through and receive this important information. So a couple of quick things. I'm not going to be reading through everything on every single slide. So I highly advise you to open the presentation. It's linked on the agenda, I believe. So you guys can have full context as to everything I'm speaking about and hopefully be following through on reading the sort of like longer, more informative descriptions of everything that I've outlined there. So first of all, I want to begin by outlining the agenda of what I'm going to be speaking out to you guys about. The first topic is the status of club funding at Notre Dame. So we're going to be discussing how current club funding is currently structured in the student union. We're going to be transitioning into how the CCC is distributing that funding throughout campus. And finally, we're going to conclude with a very brief overview of a couple of the largest obstacles and challenges that clubs are facing this semester, specifically when it concerns COVID-19 and the ongoing pandemic. So just to start on the first topic, everything you need to know about the big picture overview of student union fiscal policy is outlined in Article 18 of the Student Union Constitution. It also outlines the sources of income from whence the student union budget is then prepared. So this includes the student union activities fee, which is $95 per year for each and every one of us. A portion of the proceeds of the sale of the shirt and a portion of the return on the student union endowment as well. I'm not the one most qualified to speak on these matters, but nonetheless, this is how funding arrives in the student union budget. In the same article, it is outlined that the student union treasurer, Grace, is to prepare an annual budget for the distribution of these funds, of which clubs, as per the Constitution, are to receive 40% of those funds. So that would be the red portion in the pie chart right there. In terms of how this money is specifically allocated, the elements in blue in the previous pie chart, the money for student union orgs and special interest groups, that is dispersed most specifically by the Financial Management Board, F&B, whereas the CCC itself allocates the 40% that was in the red in the previous pie chart. So the big question now is, well, how exactly does the CCC allocate these 360 grand, a very significant sum of money to the clubs on campus? Well, this is a challenge that I myself and many of my previous presidents have tried to face in the most successful way possible. And it is certainly a lot easier said than done. So we have a very long and lengthy process as to how everything in that works together. And I have, given that this is going to be the lion's share of my presentation, I figured I would offer you a mini agenda as to what this section specifically is going to look like. So we're going to be looking at a couple of the guiding documents that outline CCC fiscal policy, moving on into the specific elements within the CCC disbursement of funds to clubs in Notre Dame. Moving on to a couple alternative sources of funding coming in from other places within the student union, such as FMB funding and student gov grants, the CRFA, et cetera. And finally, we're going to be considering other sources of funding as well. So essentially, the hierarchy of funding in the CCC that the CCC strictly follows when distributing any and all funds begins with the student union constitution. This is most specifically, of course, Article 8, the article on the CCC, as well as Article 18, which is the article in student union fiscal policy. The student union constitution also mandates that the club coordination council should create internal bylaws for procedural and fiscal procedures inherent to the club coordination council itself. And within our own bylaws, we also have provisions established to create CCC guidelines, as we call them, that are a more public-facing document through which the CCC distills the elements in the bylaws and the constitution that are most important to clubs and link those directly in our website, such that clubs will have easy access to everything they need to know about how the CCC distributes funding, how the CCC applies penalties, and so on and so forth. Essentially a summary of expected club behavior for clubs here on campus, if they wish to be quote unquote in good standing with us. So the main element of the CCC allocations year in and year out, and this has been consistent throughout recorded history in the student union, is the spring allocations process. Now, the moment as per the constitution when budgets are prepared and money is primarily dispersed is in the spring allocation phase, as we had last semester. And this is also the moment in which approximately 90 to 95% of CCC funding is directly distributed to clubs here on campus. So I've put a couple of little blocks here as to what the various elements within the allocation of that 90 to 95% of student union funding for clubs occurs. The first element is the spring allocation meetings, the SAMs, which is when we directly meet with every single club that is interested in applying for student union club funding in order to communicate all the essential information required in the process. This is when we distribute timelines, when we distribute budget sheets. Funnily enough, when we also hold CCC elections, and when we essentially inform clubs of everything they need to do if they wish to obtain student union funding. Next up, we'll be beginning collecting budget sheets from clubs. Clubs have anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, it varies by year, to fill out the budget sheets and turn those in directly to the CCC. Filling in a budget sheet from the feedback we've received is generally, it varies a lot by clubs. Some of the clubs with more complex budgets can take a couple of hours to even days or weeks to fill those out, where they utilize every last second to do so to the best of their ability. But clubs with simpler budgets can often do so in a couple of hours. We found that budget sheets work very well in terms of distilling every club's personalized budget because clubs account for their money in very different ways, of course, and utilizing the same framework that allows us to aggregate the data and process it much easier than it would otherwise be. So immediately after we receive budget sheets, we prepare a large, so we call it a master budget sheet that outlines all of the budget sheets we received, and the CCC divisions, of which there are 6, begin individually meeting with the clubs they represent that have submitted a budget sheet in order to on a very individual basis, on a very detailed basis, inspect each and every line item in all of the budget sheets we received. Now, that task is easier said than done, of course, especially when we have hundreds of clubs applying for funding on campus. But the CCC has approximately 40 personnel on every spring allocation, more or less, over the last 2 or 3 years, which is still, sums up to many meetings on a person-to-person basis, but it ensures that we can give every single budget sheet the attention and the consideration that all of the clubs here on campus are entitled to. Finally, we have, not finally, I should say, but in the next step of the process, we have interdivisional and exec reviews, which is when the divisions that are not meeting individually with clubs in the division meeting process inspect the budget sheets prepared by other divisions in the CCC. This is to remove bias and to ensure that budget allocations are more objective overall and less subjective, to eliminate any conflicts of interest and so on and so forth. Even though we already have exhaustive procedures to ensure that if you're a member of a club, you cannot meet with that club during a division meeting, for example. The CCC Executive Board, of which I am the president, also inspects the budget sheets that are submitted to the CCC, albeit in a less exhaustive fashion. Last year, for example, the CCC the CCC Exec Board focused most specifically on net zero allocation requests, which we'll get to in just 1 second. And finally, once all of that takes place, the CCC can finally congregate in its full 40-member capacity in order to hold the infamously long internal SEM. Last year, it was 2 7-hour meetings. It was brutal. It was insane. It was crazy. We took a lot of breaks. We needed to in order to remain sane during this process. But we believe that this is a necessary component in completing our due diligence here for our clubs. And after that is when we have the final fully prepared list of club allocations to disperse on campus, which we pass directly on to F&B. Besides all these checks and balances imbued in the process, we also have a couple of other procedures within the student union. The final say on these allocations, of course, belong to the F&B, the Financial Management Board, which can overturn or consider those decisions individually. And then the CCC feels that our procedure has been slighted in some way. Well, we can go directly to you guys, to the Senate, and try to appeal that decision. So as I said yesterday at the ComCon meeting, the Senate remains the apex predator when it comes to the student union and the matter of club funding. At a glance, let me see if the Clico works. At a glance, these are the statistics from last spring's allocation. There's a couple of very big numbers in there that I'm going to explain in just 1 second. But the first thing I want to point attention to is that we had 208 clubs on campus applying for funding. This is approximately 63% on campus, of the clubs on campus. And if I may add a brief aside, the club to student ratio at the university is extremely high. We have a lot of clubs compared to the amount of students here on campus. So that amounts to hundreds of CCC to club meetings. In many cases, 1 meeting will suffice to inspect club requests. But in some cases, we have to go all the way to 2 to 3 meetings and so on and so forth, just to make sure that we have every single detail that is required. The net total in projected club expenditures for the next year of the, again, 63% of clubs who applied for student union funding is that huge, nasty 2.4 big M figure. Whereas the CCC received about 371 grand to disperse to clubs. So there's a bit of a disparity there. And the CCC has a number of strategies to try to bridge this disparity. As the presentation says, of course, this is a matter that the CCC must face every year. How can CCC most effectively utilize the resources it has to fund those club requests? Because we can only fund a fraction of them. And regardless of how small percentages are altered in the Constitution, this is going to be a recurring problem, which comes directly down to the massive amount of clubs at the university, the massive and awesome programming they're putting on. But at the same time, we have to be very cognizant of the resources we have and allocate those in the most effective manner possible. So over the years, we have developed and iterated a very thorough and methodical cutting philosophy that we apply to every single club that asks for CCC / student union club funding. Interesting. Am I clicking this the right way? Oh, sorry about that, guys. I seem to be messing up the clicker. So at the end of the process, which I'll get to in just 1 second, this is what the figures ended up looking like. Just to give you guys a clear picture as to how the money is being allocated directly. So you can see that most clubs are receiving a smaller amount of money. And then that's like a nice skewed curve going directly down all the way to the clubs. Very few clubs receiving a larger share of student union funding. The CCC voted last year to implement an $18,000 ceiling. There was very ardent discussion of that topic. Some people believe that it should be much smaller. Some people believe that it should be larger. But in the end, that was the agreed upon figure by the CCC division reps. What the cutting process specifically, oh, there it is. Okay. That's a slide that I was messing around with the clicker. That was my bad, apologies. The specific cutting procedure in terms of steps occurs as such. First of all, we have the big 2.4M figure that we have to somehow sort in a way which we can fund adequately. So the CCC utilizes 2 different cutting steps. Primary cutting occurs by utilizing either the first or the second method, expenses minus revenues, or the tier system. Clubs, as opposed to many student union orgs, actually roll over money from year in to year out. So there is about 1 million in club funding that rolls over to help cover a portion of those expenses. But then besides that, we also consider club revenues as the clubs project them coming through the year. And we sort those clubs into clubs that have a positive ask clubs that will need money to run the programs they have slotted in their budget sheet, and clubs that we find have sufficient money in the rollover and in their projected revenue to cover their own expenses, which we do not fund. So the CCC only funds clubs on a need basis. We don't fund clubs that are deemed to be self-sufficient for the academic year. After we run through that final primary cut, we get to the 660 figure, but we still have to reduce that a little bit further to get to the final figure. So the secondary cutting that we utilize is designed to incentivize club fundraising, because at the end of the day, the best way for clubs to achieve their aims is to go out there and do things, put programs on, put events on, raise money for their causes, and so on and so forth. So we utilize a system known as the fundraising-based cut, FBC, which has been actually designed during my time here at the CCC. It was designed 2 years ago and implemented then, which essentially rewards clubs for being more active on campus by utilizing a formula that I am unfortunately not at liberty to disclose. But the net sum is that it encourages clubs to put on more programming, to raise more money, to get more members involved, rather than wait for money to fall from the sky, so to speak. So now if I can get this to work, yes. Based on all that procedure, of course, you guys will see that allocation take place. And now in terms of how the 40% is directly utilized by the CCC, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, and I will expound upon now, more than 90% of CCC funding directly goes to clubs at spring allocations, but we reserve about 8% for the other CCC accounts, which include contingency funding, collab funding, new club funding, etc. And you guys will see a brief summary of finances there. How do we allocate that 8% over the year? That's what the next couple of slides are explaining. The CCC has a series of appeals in order to fund clubs that may see need for funding arise during the year, as opposed to only during spring allocations. The academic year is, of course, very fluid, and clubs don't always know exactly what's going to happen in the future. So we have these options laid out such that clubs can access funding that may arise unexpectedly in the middle of the year. The CCC is, contingency funding is the primary vehicle to address this concern. It is the most used appeal that we have seen historically, and it is essentially utilized to fund unexpected events arising in the middle of the semester. The next one we have is the collaboration appeals, which are designed to incentivize club-to-club collaboration. These have been historically underutilized, but we have had a couple of them in the last couple of years. The next appeal we have is the CCC/FMB appeal, which is kind of like getting outside of the CCC area and more into the FMB area as well, which is designed along a very similar basis to the collaboration appeal to incentivize clubs collaborating, not with other clubs necessarily, but with student union org branches. Moving on to other sources of funding, we have recently passed the CRFA, the COVID-19 Response Financial Account. The CCC is happy to co-sponsor applications to that fund on behalf of clubs. Clubs cannot apply to it directly. But we have put up a bunch of resources on our website for clubs to know exactly how they can go about requesting money from that pool. And finally, we have student government grants, which student government very graciously is offering clubs this year, in which clubs can request up to $1,000 in order to further their mission or programs here on campus. And again, the full details of that are available in our website. So the matter of getting all this information out to clubs is, as many things in the CCC, easier said than done. But the primary method we communicate this information to clubs is by holding CIMs every single semester, in which we exhaustively inform clubs about all of these procedures and all the steps required to successfully complete them. So this fall's CIM was, of course, complicated by the pandemic. We had to move to an asynchronous virtual format in order to accommodate for clubs. But we still have about, again, 70% of clubs attending, which was fantastic. In recent years, we've also seen use of our website increase as it was redesigned, which is also great to hear. So moving on to how COVID-19 is affecting clubs and programming here on campus. First of all, I just want to be very emphatic and very clear here. I do not at all disagree with the measures in place to reduce the spread of the virus on campus. I'm merely going to elaborate on what we have found initially, what we are seeing initially in terms of club activity on campus as it is being affected by the pandemic and these guidelines. First of all, we see that club activities and programming are significantly down this semester. Club interaction with the CCC and requests for CCC funding are also significantly down. And finally, club revenues and expenditures are also significantly down. Unfortunately, this is largely a result of anecdotal evidence. We have not yet had the semester conclude and the ability to make a full itemized summary of where these are taking place. But we are saying this with reference to experience in previous years and previous semesters, in which we can conclude that this is happening currently on campus. There is some good news, however. Our fears last semester were that clubs would see very dire times in terms of recruitment. But the fall activities fair was actually extremely successful. It appears to be, and clubs were able to recruit members exceptionally better than we feared they would. So we have to owe SAU a huge shout out. We have to give a shout out to clubs for being so involved in the process. And say that we will continue monitoring this situation as it moves forward. But we think club recruiting is doing well compared to our fears that it might not be doing as well. So in terms of the specific COVID-19 guidelines and measures, these are all found in the fall programming guide on SAO's website. I encourage you guys all, especially if you're club leaders, to look at those and read them very thoroughly. We did put them in the CIM. We did put links to everything according to a division per division basis in order to make sure that all clubs have an awareness of what exactly they need to do. Athletic clubs, for example, might have to see different guidelines in place as opposed to performing arts clubs. And some highlights in the fall programming guide include the mandatory use of masks, regulations on the use of spaces, and restrictions to off-campus events and travel. This is specifically mostly affecting, I should say, social service clubs that rely on going out to our adjoining communities in order to engage in social service work, as well as athletic clubs that are having trouble competing, which is for many clubs one of the main purposes for which they practice very substantially. So there are undoubtedly many clubs currently struggling to achieve their mission on campus. As to what the spring semester 2021 will look like, we're still benchmarking as to what measures have been successful, which ones have not, how we can seek to improve to be a better advocate and mentor for clubs on campus. It's still a question mark, unfortunately, but I'll get to a new initiative that we're building to account for that in just 1 second as well. One good thing we have seen is a very notable rise in club-to-club collaborations recently. This is evident in all the programming that has taken place regarding the 2020 election, for example, in which clubs such as College Democrats, College Republicans, and Bridge ND have been collaborating closely to put events here on campus. And with a new initiative that C6 is addressing as well. Another big question mark that we have to wait for and see that is very important for specifically clubs that compete or engage in very large expenses during the spring term is winter reallocation. I'm not the best person to speak about winter reallocations and what they will look like. FMB would be a much better source to answer such questions. But it is important to begin thinking about what this may mean for clubs and organizations that rely upon such funding in the latter part of the academic year. And finally, getting back to the initiative CCC is putting together to, again, be a better mentor, a better advocate for clubs here on campus is C6, the CCC Committee on Club Consulting. Essentially, the CCC I have found has been very reactive instead of proactive in terms of helping clubs out. We kind of like step in when things are going badly or poorly. What we should be doing is being more proactive and more engaging in going out to clubs and trying to assess what their needs are and help them work through those needs, as well as help them see areas of opportunity for collaboration with other clubs, as well as with student union orgs here on campus. Needless to say, the branches of the administration, as well as various centers and offices on our campus, such as GRC or MSPS. C6 already has its first big major project, which is awesome. They're working on putting together the ND Disabilities Club Forum, which is going to be held on October the 27th, which is fantastic. We're going to have a lot of cool clubs like SO1D, Accessible, et cetera, participating. And we're very excited about that. So just to offer a very brief conclusion, the times are indeed dire for clubs, but thankfully a very robust club funding methodology remains firmly entrenched. We think we will be able to very successfully complete the spring allocation next year. There should be no problem with that. And we're doing our best to become a more functional, active advocate for clubs on campus. Now that much of our in-person collaboration has ceased as a result of the pandemic, which is why C6 is now in place as well. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take a couple of questions. I will say that I think we don't have too much time for questions, but I will be staying after the meeting for a brief amount of time in case any of you should like to express any questions you don't have time to right now. I'm also very happy to take any questions via email or GroupMe or phone number or any other tool that works for you. So thank you for listening to me, I guess.
Thanks so much, Ricardo. I'm always very impressed by the comprehensive manner in which you present info. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We actually do have about 5 to 10 minutes. If anyone
Oh,
has any
awesome.
questions they'd like to present to Ricardo. Yeah, Ben.
Go ahead, Ben.
But I will take time to give you a simple yes, no one. But first of all, wow, very well done. This is very impressive. Thank you for letting us, sharing all of this with us. Just a very general question, in case we were a little more curious, would the student union treasurer or CCC be able to provide senators with the actual breakdown of the student union budget beyond this pie chart that you've shown us? Like more specifically, how much goes to each branch, et cetera? Is there something like that that we have access to?
That's a fantastic question, Ben. If I am to speak on the CCC itself, I can say a few thoughts on FMB, but Grace is undoubtedly a better source to speak for FMB. But I can offer a little bit of input from the CCC. If you're looking at knowing how much funding goes directly to clubs, I'm not entirely sure if that was a portion of your question, but to individual clubs, we are not at liberty to discuss individual club budgeting. We can only discuss club data on the aggregate format. That said, I would be very happy to discuss the aggregate statistics of club funding with you at any time of your choosing. Now, on the matter of how FMB displays data about the allocations for student union orgs is a question, again, that I do not feel I should be answering. But if Grace wants to chime in, that would be fantastic.
I can. Can you guys hear me? This is so alarming. I apologize. But
yes.
Past precedent, if you email me, I'm more than happy to give you a comprehensive full breakdown of how we allocated money at both spring and winter reallocation. We don't make that information public, but shoot me an email, gstephe2 or fmb@nd.edu.org, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. Again, like Ricardo so wonderfully said, it is more aggregated in that we can't tell you how the individual student union organizations spend that money once we allocate it, but if you are concerned, Ben, I would love to send it to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Grace.
Fantastic question. Any other questions?
Keep them coming, folks.
I don't know if you can answer this for me or not, but a couple of the clubs I was in this year, and then some people told me from my dorm, were clubs that like they weren't really using CCC funding, but they said they're still requiring, they were like from the university had to have dues that people pay, and then they weren't really sure what they were going to use them for because they don't really need the money to fund their club. So I was wondering what the reasoning behind requiring dues was for the clubs.
Sure, that is an excellent question. I can speak. It is my understanding that the university does not require clubs to collect dues.
It is required except for social service.
I thought that was a CCC requirement instead of an SEO requirement. The CCC does mandate the collection of dues for clubs requesting student union funding outside of social service clubs. The reason we do that is because, as you saw in a couple of these slides, the funding available from the student union to disperse to clubs is very limited, and demand for it is very high. So we just want to make sure that we have a nice baseline by which to encourage clubs to begin collecting funds. This is why we require clubs that have the intention of applying for student union funding be mandated to collect dues. Now, if a club does not believe it needs funding, which is entirely a club's prerogative, the club is free not to collect dues. But then if they are interested in applying for student union funding, the CCC would apply a penalty on them for not adhering to that statute. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, great questions. Madison.
I'm sorry, I have a question for the chair, actually. Did we have a motion to cap the meeting at 90 minutes today?
We did not, Madison. That is a great point. I was very excited about the campus dining. We can certainly have a motion at this point. I was intending to keep it under 90 minutes anyway, but would you like to motion that?
Yeah, I would like to cap the meeting at 90.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote on that, folks. All in favor? Wonderful. Okay, meeting is now capped at 90 minutes. And Ricardo, you still got 5 more minutes for questions.
Wonderful. Ben, did you have any more questions? I hate to put you on the spot, but
Just out of curiosity, well, I don't know if you're
Sure.
Are you allowed to disclose that? I'm just genuinely curious.
That is a very good question. I am unfortunately not allowed to discuss individual club funding for any specific clubs. I will say that the clubs who receive larger funding are generally, speaking on the aggregate in terms of data here, clubs that have very large capital expenses at one time and then don't request funding for a number of years afterward. So it's usually a number of clubs that generally face such large expenses. And there, I say capital expenses, but they are also often travel for isolated events. So it is generally those clubs that receive that amount of funding. It would have been higher had the CCC not implemented a cap, but the CCC did implement that cap to further restrict that as well.
I guess kind of along those lines, what would the CCC's reasoning for implementing the cap?
For implementing a ceiling on club funding, you mean?
Yeah.
So as you saw on the previous graph, presentation is no longer on, but as you saw kind of like the curve going around, most of the clubs that we're funding at a lower rate are not being funded necessarily at 100%, except for the clubs like at the very tail end of the curve. So in essence, the CCC has 360 grand to distribute to clubs, and we don't want too much of that going to any single club. We want to make that more dispersed, more evenly dispersed to our clubs, especially for clubs that have a more complicated access to financial resources, which is why we implemented that ceiling, just to make sure that we weren't allocating too much money to one specific club.
Oh yeah, go for it, Thomas. Last question.
Just decent? I'll try better next semester.
What is your forecast for the large amount of money we have in reserves? The low use of funds by clubs, I would assume so far, and going forward with that money on hand to avoid massive rollover and to avoid massive last minute spending on poor choice spending.
So I will say, first of all, Thomas, fantastic question. On the matter of how clubs will require that funding, I do not believe I have sufficient evidence right now to disclose an opinion on that. But we will be communicating about that next semester, once we have a more accurate picture as to what the semester looked like financially for clubs. I knew GLZ has been awesome for looking into the status of club accounts this semester. One thing I will say about clubs is clubs do not face the same bar in terms of crazy expenditures as some student union orgs do. Don't want to point any fingers, by the way. But club money rolls over year in and year out. So clubs don't have to worry about their money being transported into some strange, obscure void from whence it will never emerge again. Club funding is staying with the club year in and year out. So clubs don't see that pressing need to spend every single dollar they have excessively. Yes.
So given that, well, yeah, I guess I would just say be cognizant of the fact that if the club spending now is going down, what is your plan for next year's team in terms of adjusting the amount of money, because the clubs don't need as much, and there still is that limit, those measures that you have, how do you think you'll have without?
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean, Thomas. Ultimately, I think that decisions should be taken when we have a more accurate picture as to what the funding looks like after next semester, particularly when it concerns winter reallocations, as well as the disbursement status of the CRFA. So I will probably be commenting on that further next semester. But right now, I think it is a little too early to be discussing that. But I will say that we are definitely discussing that very heavily internally in the CCC Financial Committee.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ricardo. Impressive as ever. Love the sweater and mask coordination. Very well done. Great presidential presentation. All right, folks, that concludes the presentation portion of our meeting. And I can now invite Aaron forward to present on SO 2021, now 12, in order to amend the constitution of the undergraduate student body to replace the executive programming board with the executive committee.
Hello, friends. As if you haven't heard enough from me already on this year. I am back with SO 2112. Thank you, Sarah, which is essentially SO 2021-09. incorporated with the recommendations of the Committee on the Constitution that the co-sponsors and I kind of decided was relevant to what our original intent was on that bill, to essentially abolish the Executive Programming Board and establish the Executive Committee. So I'll briefly walk you through that. The first part, Article 5 being repealed, essentially abolishes the Executive Programming Board as is. And then looking to the second part of the Senate order, moves the Executive Committee, not as its own article in the Student Union Constitution, but under the Chief of Staff's, for lack of a better term, job description in the Constitution under Article 2, Section 3, which is the Chief of Staff portion under executive officers. It outlines pretty basically what the function of that committee will be, which is pretty much in line with what the Committee on the Constitution kind of recommended. However, not so much as a programming board, but more as an overall kind of student union committee. Membership there, and pretty much all the rest is just addressing the various changes that need to happen in the Constitution throughout and the different articles of the student union organizations covering that. That's about all I have.
Thanks so much for that run through, Aaron. We can now open the floor for any questions folks may have on this new and improved SO 2021-12. Any questions, folks? Oh, I see a hand. Yes, Madison.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that fell more in line with a view of the committee, more still as a executive programming board, which just really wasn't what we were envisioning. I think ultimately what we got back from the Committee on the Constitution was something that was still EPB with just an inefficient membership that just was going to run into the same issues. And so that's what we kind of wanted to stay away from. I think having the executives of the various student union organizations helps us get that kind of cohesive committee of the student union so that we can get a full grasp of the entire picture, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Further questions, folks? Oh, who do we have? It's Niels. Okay, go for it.
If I remember correctly, there was kind of a dispute, is the right word. This was kind of tossed back and forth between you and I think it was Thomas Davis. I was wondering like what kind of settlement did you guys have with, or is there like a matching between your ideas that work here, or what kind of conversations?
I'll go first, and if Thomas wants to add anything, by all means. What we definitely did is we definitely kind of found a middle path, which is something that I had talked about the last time that this came up when the Committee on the Constitution's recommendations were presented to the Senate and ultimately rejected. I think this is a pretty good middle path. I would say that what we got back from ComCon was not so much our original intent. It was more a re-envisioning of the Executive Programming Board that, again, we kind of had decided needed to be moved into a different direction. But I would say there is significant change in the original SO 2021-09, which is of course now 12. And that one, this isn't its own article. I'm very appreciative for the Committee on the Constitution's work on this Senate order and to kind of bring it into the greater body of reform that the Judicial Council and that committee is trying to bring to our Constitution. And as well, just making that a little briefer. I think a lot of in my first presentation on this order, it was pretty long, and now a lot of that conversation will be moved into the actual committee on what our bylaws will look like, and that conversation will be had with the membership of the executive committee. But again, I'd say this is a pretty middle path. I don't know if Thomas, you want to speak as to that, but.
Aaron's a great guy. He's a good guy. No, yeah, ultimately, I think where we could both come together is Article 5 was serving no purpose in the student union. I've elaborated that enough.
As Matthew just pointed out to me via text, it's going to be weird adjusting the Constitution, just get rid of an article and renumber everything. That's okay. That's our job. Ultimately, yeah, we did have our disagreements. As I've spoke with some of the co-sponsors and Aaron, ultimately in every issue, basically, there's always going to be a logistical issue versus a practicality issue. We want to have a great constitution that follows logistics and constitutional theory and philosophy. But ultimately, we're just a college student government, and we want to be practical. So I think it's important. I have no objections. Obviously, we gave you our suggestions. You rejected them, but that's completely fine. I understand there is a method of practicality. So I've looked this over. I'm very pleased. So I would support it.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you both for that exchange. All right. Any questions, or do I hear a motion to move to debate? Oh, that's Michael Murakami. What's up? Fabulous. Read my mind. Okay, let's vote on that motion. All in favor? All opposed? Wonderful. We're now in debate. Would anyone like to raise a point of debate on this order? Yes, Madison.
Yeah, I guess like I understand that it's not just the executive programming board, but to what you stated, like your powers essentially and duties is about event coordination and programming. And I think the special interest boards like books or basketball and prison and are pretty important. So I guess my only objection is that they've kind of been left out, even though programming still seems to be a substantive part of the executive.
Can I? Okay, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that this isn't like a, set, we're only going to let these people into these meetings. Of course, those exact procedures and guidelines will be worked out in the bylaws. But what I would say is, at the end of the day, what the executive committee is all about is student union cohesion and bringing together the different organizations so that we can work together to serve the student body. And so personally, being that I would chair this committee through the remainder of my term, and hopefully this would remain the sentiment for future chiefs of staff, that, it's all about bringing together the right people so we can talk about the important issues and make sure that we are serving the student body to the best of our ability. That would be my response to that.
Any other points of debate? Yeah, Mairead.
I would just say that I think that this committee could be a very positive addition to like the Constitution, the student union. Just like Aaron said, I think it could provide a lot of cohesion. Like even though programming is listed as one of the parts of this committee, I don't really anticipate it to be a group that programs events. I think it's a group that just aligns the goals of programming policy, life in the dorms, and everything into one vision. And so I think that by adding this to the Constitution, like it's easy to say this committee can exist informally when everyone in these positions kind of gets along and like wants to hang out anyway, and you don't like you can't hear these positions maybe knowing each other. But by adding this to the Constitution, it's just like reinforcing the goal of student union cohesion for years to come. So I think that it's really great. So thank you for writing this. And thank the Constitution as well for helping edit it.
Thanks, Mairead. All right, any other points of discussion? Michael?
Second.
All right, let's vote on that motion. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, we are now in an official vote over SO 2021-12, and Thomas has copy and pasted our favorite Google form into the agenda. So if you guys would all like to take a minute to fill that out, that'd be great.
Better get the Jeopardy music.
Oh, yes.
Of course there's an ad. Just when I didn't want an ad. It's okay, it's a 30-second timer. So. Of course there's an ad. I'm so mad.
Okay, folks, thank you so much for your diligence in voting. SO 2021-12 passes by a vote of 29 to 2 to 1. Would that be correct? 29 to 2 to 2. Thank you all. And we look forward to implementing that into the Constitution. And Matthew and Thomas, would I be correct in saying that this is the first constitutional amendment of the year? Woohoo! Making history, folks. Excited.
Thanks, friends.
Yes. And we can move on to our final general order, which is SO 2021-13, another order to amend the Constitution of the undergraduate student body to revise Article 8, and I can invite Thomas or Matthew or Ricardo, whoever feels so called, to present this order.
Okay, Order SO 2021-13, following Student Union internal review on behalf of the Committee on the Constitution, me, Matthew, and Ricardo, in order to amend the Constitution of the undergraduate student body to revise Article 8. Whereas SS 2021-09 calls upon the Senate Committee on the Constitution to convene meetings to propose and discuss revisions to the Student Union Constitution in order to remove unnecessary operational procedures presented therein. Whereas Article 8 of the Constitution of the Student Union of the University of Notre Dame, Duloc, the Constitution outlines the operational procedures of the Club Coordination Council, whereas the bylaws of the CCC have received a distinguished ranking from the Student Union Ethics Commission and satisfactory outline in the internal procedures and protocols of the CCC. Whereas the Constitution only grants the CCC controller the responsibility to sit on the FMB, but the powers and duties of the CCC controller are significantly more encompassing than that. Whereas Article 8, Section 3H on page 23 requires the CCC to present bylaws to the Student Union Ethics Commission by May 1st, a redundancy from Article 1, Section 2B. Whereas Article 8, Section 4 on pages 23 and 24 detail the CCC's transition procedures, which are already incorporated nearly verbatim into the CCC bylaws in Sections 302A, 3023A, 3024A, 3025A, 3026A. And therefore, these transitional provisions constituting the operational procedure of the CCC have already been incorporated into their bylaws. Therefore, be it ordered by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame, Duloc, that the Constitution of the undergraduate and student body pursuant to Section 1.5 of the same is hereby amended as follows. I won't read that. Everything I just did explains what the changes are in here. All transition is gone, and Section 3 of the amendment tackles Club Coordination Council controller. I will offer one amendment we must make to this is subsection H should be struck. The CCC shall elect a representative to serve as a voting member of the Campus Life Council. This is something that is in their bylaws. This is why we made this change to this order. However, the bylaws of the CLC have not been approved through the Board of Trustees to reflect that change. So that would be a grave inconsistency in the Constitution. I can't make that motion. Well, yeah. Hey, Ricardo.
Sure, I'll make the motion. I mean, can I as a co-sponsor?
Yes.
Sure, I make the motion.
To what?
I motion to grant the amendments, right? 2H or 2BH or no, just 2H from the order as it's going to be written. In case I can actually do that motion. I'm sorry, guys, all my eloquence is gone.
Used it all up for the day. Okay. Does this actually need a vote, given that he's a co-sponsor?
Approved.
Approved. Fabulous. Thank you, Ricardo. You're just doing all the big things today. Okay.
Yeah, so any questions?
All right, let's vote on that motion. All approve. Okay, that's beautiful. And we are now in debate. Any points of debate that anyone would like to raise on this order? Ricardo.
I am the CCC president and I approve.
Short and sweet. We love it. Okay, other points of debate? Michael. Okay, let's vote on that. All in favor? All opposed? All right, we are now in a vote on SO 2021-13. And Thomas, have you? Okay, he's got it. He's got it. Just give him a sec.
Oh, I better pull up the Jeopardy music again.
This is perfect. It gets us time to get Jeopardy in.
Should 10 hours long suffice?
Oh, yes, I hope.
These ads are gonna kill me. I swear.
Okay, it is in, folks. It is letter E. Transparency. Thank you, Madison. Okay, everyone, voting is now closed. And SO 2021-13 passes by a vote of 30-1. So thank you all. This has been a very historic meeting. We have had 2 presentations. We have had our first 2 constitutional amendments. I will call it a success. I will preface new business for next week. We're going to have a presentation by the Diversity Council executive officers on further student union incorporation, as well as a second presentation, we're just following a pattern here, by the Student Union Ethics Commission and the Committee on the Constitution, a joint presentation. I will now open the floor to any announcements folks may have. Mairead, and then Aaron.
This cafe tonight, 9 p.m. Library Lawn. Also, this cafe tomorrow at 8 p.m. Library Lawn, collaborating with CSC. So if you want information on any of their programs, you can get it there. And we're just playing Open Walks Ahead. You are one of the ones for
A great weekend for sub. Okay, Aaron.
You should have gotten an email today from Student Gov. We will be having a town hall with former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg on trust, which his new book is about. Tickets will be distributed via lottery, so we can only have 100 students there. I actually have the great honor and power of doing the lotto, so like I'm gonna have a lot of a power trip with that. So fill out that form by Saturday. It is random. It is random. I promise. I just get to like run the whatever. I need to figure that out before then, but I'll get there. Fill out the form by Saturday at 5 p.m. if you'd like to request a ticket and or submit a question.
But everyone can come via live stream. So exciting. Inclusion. Matthew.
The LGBT law firm is putting on an online event tomorrow on Bostock and statutory interpretation, if that's your kind of thing. And so if you want that information, you can get it.
Love it. Thank you, Matthew. Who do we have there? Is that Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carly's having her signature event on Fieldhouse Mall tomorrow from 5 to 7:30. So come share your life and get some Reusable donuts and Sister Cannon and friends.
I love that for you guys. Okay, further announcements? Yes, Michael. Fabulous. Let's vote on that. All hands in the air. Okay, get your chili. Enjoy your weekend, folks.